And let's see if we can get share screen. All right, excuse me one sec here. Are you guys looking forward to, how many of you guys are graduating here? Within, are you, is this your last class for most of you guys? Some of you,
No.
I asked that question once before, right?
Next to last class.
Next to the last class. Okay, so you're getting close. All right,
Yeah.
let me see if I can get this arranged here.
Sorry, Professor. Yeah, this is my last class.
This is your last class. Who was it that said that?
Robert, sorry.
Robert. All right, nicely done, Robert.
Yeah, I'm
And
excited.
yeah, Brian says this is his last class too.
Elizabeth and I were talking about meeting up at commencement and celebrating afterwards.
For sure.
I
Man.
think Robert should join us.
Yeah, when you say celebrating, are you talking about maybe having a celebration drink?
Cocktail,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or two.
An adult
Or-
beverage for sure.
or several. Yeah. Well, good. You guys enjoy because getting your bachelor's degree it is quite an accomplishment, given the fact that, and I mentioned this right at the beginning when we were, I think our first session, is that when you have a full-time job and you have a full-time family, and then you're asked to do all the requirements from these different courses, it is demanding on you. And the course, the course just continues to trudge along week after week after week. And, you guys have to deal with life as it goes along. You get sick and you have to deal with that, and you have to deal with work, and then you have to deal with your homework. I commend all of you for doing what you are doing here. This takes effort and it takes a commitment. And I'm very, very proud that all of you guys are doing well and getting your bachelor's degree. And then, who knows, from this, you might just decide to go on for your master's degree and continue on with that. And then some of you perhaps might continue with the torture and go on for your doctorate degree.
Come on, Angela.
And believe me, when you go for your doctorate degree, believe me, it's torture. There's a lot of work in that one there. But still, that being said, very, very proud of you for all doing such a tremendous job here. Now, one other thing I want to mention before we get going is that I'd like to have you guys during the week take a look at the grade book and make sure in the grade book that you don't have any blank areas, that if there's any grades like a 0 in there, that's only to notify you that I'm looking for that assignment. And if you submit that assignment, then I will change that to a regular grade. So go to the grade book when you get a chance and go through that and make sure that you attend to those areas where you haven't completed a submission on that. Now, some of those have a higher point value than others. There are some that are valued at 50 points and others are valued at 10 points. So you might want to take a look at, if you only have a limited amount of time, do the ones that have the most impact and then submit those. So I just maybe a suggestion there for you. All right, you guys ready to go? Here we go. You guys can see my screen, right? Excellent. All right, we're going to be looking at corporate level strategy. And with corporate level strategy, let's see here, what happened to that? There we go. So here's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the 3 different directional strategies with corporate strategy. One is a growth strategy. The second one is a stability strategy. And the third one is retrenchment. These are all the strategies then, general areas of that, that the firm will pursue. Now, when we're looking at growth, there's different ways that we can grow the company. We can grow the company through integration strategies. That's vertical integration and horizontal integration. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to those slides. We can also grow the company through diversification strategies, concentric and conglomerate diversification. When we're looking at stability strategies, these are strategies where the firm actually is trying to hold its position. And a good example of a firm or why they would do this would be, let's say a firm has just done or gone through a merger or is just completed an acquisition of another firm. And what you want to do is you want to allow those two corporate cultures to kind of gel, to kind of permeate any of those strategic changes. So you kind of do a pause strategy where you're resting any more strategic activity until both of those firms, or the merged firm and the acquired firm, gel with the original firm. And then from that, after that gelling process has occurred, then continue with your growth strategy. Another one is a pause strategy. And that would be a strategy where a firm is thinking about entering into a new area. It could be a new market, could be a new geographic area, could be another international expansion. And they're not certain yet about the market that they're entering into. So they're going to kind of pause and proceed with caution based on gathering more data. Once we get more data and we have more of a complete idea of what that market's going to be, then we can follow a more aggressive strategy. So there are two examples of a pause strategy or a stability strategy. And then, of course, with retrenchment strategies, we're looking at a company that needs to have a turnaround. You know, what really qualifies for a turnaround? What kinds of companies should be a turnaround? Some should just be following a bankruptcy strategy or some sort of other retrenchment strategy there. So we'll take a look at that as well. So we will be looking at vertical and horizontal growth, and then we'll be looking at diversification strategies, concentric and conglomerate. We also get to look at the portfolio analysis. This is the BCG matrix and the GE McKinsey matrix. And these are positioning matrices. Now, the first one, the BCG, can be used for businesses and it can be used for products. Now, the second one, the GE McKinsey, is only used for business units. How do those business units align relative to each other so that we can make the right kinds of allocation decisions, allocating resources for those different business units? So corporate level strategies, all decision makers, is trying to decide what is going to be the optimal mix, of those businesses and what's going to be the overall direction of that firm. Is it going to be growth? Is it retrenchment? Is it going to be stability? Where are we going to go with this? So there are some questions that management need to ask of themselves. What is the long-term choices of this firm? What businesses are we in currently? And what businesses do we go into? What do we want to enter into? And then what do we want to do with those businesses? Do we want to, again, what is it that we want to do with them? And then third, what's the best way to manage them? Now, some strategies, we try and create synergies between the business units. Other strategies, we're not even looking at synergies. We're just looking at profit potential. So what is the best way to manage these business units? Those are some questions then that the senior leaders would ask of themselves. So three main focuses that would be confronting that firm. What's the strategic direction? What's our overall focus going to be? Is it going to be growth, stability, or retrenchment? And then portfolio analysis. This is an important part of corporate level strategy. When we portfolio analysis, what we're looking at, especially if we're looking at business units, we're trying to align those business units on a graph to determine how well each of those business units are performing relative to each other. And then from that, parenting decisions. How do we allocate the resources? How do we allocate the capabilities to those different product lines and those different business units based on the data that came off of our portfolio analysis. And again, we have portfolio analysis that we're going to be looking at tonight, the BCG and the GE McKinsey. We also have a couple of other matrices that we're going to be doing tonight. In fact, all of the matrices that you need for your final report are going to be found in this chapter. So 3 emphasis, the growth strategy is going to be expanding its activities. We can do that through vertical growth, horizontal growth, those are concentration growths, or we can do it through concentric and conglomerate. Those are diversification growths. For stability, we can do a pause and a no change and a profit strategy. And then under retrenchment, we look at, is a company viable for a turnaround? We look at captive company, sellout, divestment, bankruptcy, and liquidation. So growth strategies. Obviously, with the strategy, what we're trying to do is grow the company. So it's designed then to achieve growth in sales, assets, profit, or the combination of all 3 of those. Now, we know then with any time we have aggressive growth strategy that we're implementing, solidify and reveal profits for that firm. It could be a quarter, it could be 6 months before those profits are realized. So knowing then that there is going to be a period that lags behind that before the profit actually starts to reveal itself. And as I mentioned, there's 2 different types of growth strategies. One is concentric, and the second one is diversification. So we're going to look at concentrated growth more. Concentric growth. So this one here is increasing the share in existing markets. And if you remember, when we did Ansoff product market matrix, that's really what we were looking at. Increasing your market share in existing markets. That's one way of growing your company. And that is considered concentric growth. Now, when a firm is in an environment where there's not a lot of discontinuity, disruption, turbulence that's going on in that industry, this is one of the best ways to grow that company, and it's considered a low risk strategy. So as we mentioned with Ansoff product market matrix, the ways that we can do this is we can increase the rate of the use of your product by those current customers. We can attract new customers to your products or services, or we can attract non-users and new customers to your products and services. So 2 different methods. Vertical growth, horizontal growth. And this is all based on the value chain. So if you guys remember that value chain and value chain analysis, it ran horizontally, starting with the raw material going all the way to that customer. And remember, the value chain, the definition of that is the linked set of value creating activities going from raw material all the way to that customer. So when we're looking at a vertical growth strategy, we're looking at that value chain and actually what you do with that value chain. Since it's running horizontally, now we're going to take and we're going to flip it this way here. And we're going to try and grow our company based on moving up and down that value chain, either forward or backward, or growing sideways on that value chain. That's horizontal growth or horizontal integration. So here again is that value chain. Just as a reminder for you guys, you have that linked set of value creating activities there. So vertical growth, it would be an acquisition or a merger of a firm either in the upstream activity or the downstream activity. So we would then either acquire or merge with a firm that is doing an activity closer to that customer or closer to that raw material. Now, there are benefits to doing this kind of growth strategy. If we're going closer to the customer, we're getting a better handle on what those customers' demands might be, and you can react quicker to what those demands are and their changing conditions. If we go closer to the raw material, we're getting an idea on what levels of raw material are out there that we can count on, that we can forecast with. And again, with both of those types of activities, we're picking up the profit stream that each of those areas would have been generated, giving us a little bit more control over that value chain. Horizontal growth, now we're moving sideways on that value chain. So we're looking at either a merger or an acquisition of a business in the same level of that value chain. Let me give you an example of that here in just a second. All right, let's start with vertical integration. We can do backward integration, we can do forward integration, or we can do balance, which would be full integration, going backward and forward at the same time. So backward integration would be a function that is previously provided by a supplier moving backward in that value chain. There are companies that do this. Walmart, Target, and Zara do this. They have integrated back towards that raw material backward. Forward activity would be a function that is being provided by a supplier, but we're moving forward on that value chain. And this would be going both directions, acquiring a firm or merging with a firm backward, and acquiring or merging with a firm going forward, giving that firm much more control over value stream activities. So vertical integration. Here's an example of a company that has done vertical integration. Two of them, actually. They're both in the auto industry. Ford, they made a strategic agreement with a US-based chip maker, Global Foundries, to develop computer chips. So they've done it. That's a supplier now. So they've integrated backward in their value chain to pick up that activity and control over those chips that are necessary for them to use in their cars and trucks. GM did the same thing with Qualcomm and NXP Semiconductors. So they made an agreement with them to co-develop and manufacture computer chips. Again, integrating backward in that value chain so that they have more control over those particular activities and that slide. Here's an example of a company that has done full integration. So I want you to think of this for a second before I show you this. Can you imagine the power and the profit stream that a company would have if they controlled all of the activities from raw material all the way to the retailer, all those activities? Every one of those, remember, was a profit area. So if we can pick up all of those profit streams and all of that control, can you imagine how much power and control that firm has? So here's the example. Petroleum industry. So you got Shell, Exxon, you've got BP oil. Those are good examples of companies that control their whole value chain. So they do all the exploration, they do the production, they do the crude, they do the shipping. They then do the storage, they do the product, making the product. They do the trading of the product, of trading it on larger commodities markets. And then from that, they can do the distribution of that product, going to commercial markets, industrial markets, or retail. So they control all of those areas of the value stream. So when anyone says that the petroleum industry is not making any money, don't believe them at all, because they're making money in each of these areas of that value stream. So now let's go over to horizontal growth. Now remember, we're on that value chain again, but now we're moving horizontally on it. If we are a retailer acquiring another retail store, something that's similar to yours. So Luxottica has done that. They've got Ray-Ban, Sunglass Hut, Oakley. So with Luxottica brands, they've gone horizontally and acquired other firms in that same industry. This broadens their product line, broadens their market within that product line. Now think of what this does as a benefit for Luxottica. Are they able to create any synergies by doing this? They are. Their inventory control center. How about their purchasing? HR? How about their marketing? All of those areas that they have with Luxottica can be shared with the others, and they can gain the synergies from that. Here's another example of horizontal growth. You got Delta Airline. and you had Northwest Airline. Now, the story behind this was Delta and Northwest. They were, of course, they were competitors. And Delta was flying from one airport going to a destination, Northwest flying from the same airport going to the same destination, leaving within 15 minutes of each other, both of them flying planes that were half full. And this was going on for a long period of time. So Delta and Northwest finally sat down and started talking and going, you know, neither one of us are really making any money here because we're flying planes that are half full, and we're just killing ourselves here by the way we're pushing this model. So what they decided to do was create a brand new entity. So it's no longer Delta Airlines, and it's no longer, excuse me, it's no longer Delta, it's no longer Northwest. Now it's Delta Airlines is the new corporation. So it's a brand new corporation. What they gained from that is this. All of those routes that Delta had, they still keep. All of the routes that Northwest had, they still keep. So now with both those combined routes, they've expanded their market. They're no longer flying two planes going to the same destination. They're flying a single plane going to the destination. So they're getting more efficiency with their aircraft. They don't need two operations anymore. They don't need two marketing. They don't need two logistics. They don't need two finance areas. They don't need two HR. So they've combined those functional areas from both of those companies into one single company. So they were able to cut down on their expenses as well. And because of that, they became very profitable in making that strategic move. Now, what happens then? When you're in the airline industry or any industry, and you find yourself at a competitive disadvantage in that industry, where you're starting to lose your sales, your revenues are going down, your profits are going down. Well, the one thing that a firm is going to do is try to find a solution to stop that bleeding. They're going to try and find a way to at least mitigate what's going on and try to regain some of the market share and the profitability and the revenues that they once had. So that's what the airline industry was facing when Delta and Northwest did their merge and became Delta Airlines. So let me give you an example of that here. So down at the bottom of the screen, you see that Delta and Northwest did that. And then shortly after that, we had US Airlines and American Airlines merge. And then Continental and United merge, and then you have Southwest and Air Trans merge. Now they became competitive. Now they're not at a competitive disadvantage again. The industry consolidated and became more effective by doing this. Other examples of mergers out there was Microsoft, LinkedIn, and then Heinz Food and Kraft Food have also merged. So with a merger, then it's a voluntary union of two or more firms competing on roughly the same terms, equal terms, into one new legal entity. That's one way of growing a company, through a merger. Acquisition, another way of growing a company, acquiring that company, completely absorbing that company either into a operating subsidiary or division of the main company. Now, one of the things about an acquisition, it's considered to be a good way to keep your company growing here, rather than just starting and having your business and expanding into another area. So this one here, you already have a viable business that you're acquiring. So here's some examples of that. You've got Buffalo Wild Wings and Arby's, you've got CVS Pharmacy and Aetna, and then you've got Amazon and Whole Foods. Now, the other ones I kind of understand, CVS Pharmacy and Aetna, well, they're both servicing that medical industry. And you have Buffalo Wild Wings and Arby's in the fast food industry, but Amazon, online retailer, and Whole Foods, grocery store. Anyone want to give me an idea why that sounds good. Why they would do that? Why would Amazon buy Whole Foods for 17 or $13 billion? Any thoughts?
Getting into the market of shipping,
What do you think?
shipping food.
So people can do an online order and have the food. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? Angela, you got a thought? Nope, she doesn't have a thought. All right. All right. Anybody else? Robert, you got a thought? Where's Robert? Is he there? Robert probably went out and got dinner or something like that. He'll come back with us later. Well, think about the customers of Amazon and the customers of Whole Food. Is there similarities between those customers and their buying habits? Do we have those that shop at Whole Foods? Are they the type of shopper that you would find at Amazon? Thoughts?
No. So what they're
No?
trying to do is they're trying to get more of a market and have more people, or I guess just open up their scopes. In
Larger
the
market share?
in the market share, but also because they created a second version company called like Whole Foods 360, that those people, from what I read, those are the people that normally shop at Amazon. So
Okay.
they're already creating a market share where those people do shop.
And there's a new one now that Amazon has, isn't it called Amazon Fresh or something? Where
Yes.
there are no checkers, you just go in there and put your food in your cart. And it's like a computer checkout, right? Scans your food. I haven't
Yeah,
tried that yet. I
it's
think I'd
pretty
be
neat.
interested to try that. You haven't
I
tried it,
just
Elizabeth?
went to New York. Mhm.
Yeah, I have to try that. I have to try that.
You-
All right, let's take a
whoever
look at
walks in
Google.
with-
I didn't hear.
When you walk in, you have to log into your Amazon account. And then once you log in, you get your stuff, and everybody who's with you, you have to walk out at the same time. So it checks it all out of
What'd
your
you say,
Amazon
Elizabeth?
account.
Am I? You
Oh, am I cutting out?
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, let's see what kind of purchases acquisition has made over the last. So we've got back in 2005, they purchased Android for 50 million, and in 2006 they bought YouTube for 1.65 billion. Postini for 625 million in 2007. 2007 also, they did DoubleClick for 3.1 billion. 2010, 25 million for a DocVerse.
You keep freezing up. I don't
Down
know if you
there.
can hear us, but
Anyways, that nation.
you've been cutting in and out and you freeze up every once in a while.
Okay, I thought it was just me with my bad connection, Angela.
I know. I think maybe Professor needs to
Yeah.
close some applications or something. I don't know. Too much running in the background.
Yeah, maybe.
He's froze up.
Oh,
There
we
he
lost
went.
him.
I couldn't answer his question because I really didn't hear all of it.
Oh,
I didn't want to tell him that though.
your secret safe with me. Do you think that's back on?
Still recording.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Look at the left top corner of the screen
Oh,
where
it
it says.
is. It is. Oh, there, he's coming on.
Can you
And
hear me?
Angela got all that, yes,
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet here. I don't have an idea what's happening here, but
what city are
let me
you
see if I
in?
can get back. I'm sorry,
What city are you in?
I'm in Upland.
Oh, my cousin lives like in Covina, West Covina. She was having bad internet issues and she had Spectrum. Do you have Spectrum?
Yeah, I do have Spectrum.
She was having,
So if I lose you guys, it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because my internet is going out. Sometimes we just have to deal with this. So what I'll do is I'll record this session and let's see how far we can get along. Okay, maybe it's stabilized by now. Does it sound a little bit better? I shut down all my other applications that I was running. So anyway,
it does
so
sound
I think
better.
where I was with, yeah, I'm getting a little note here that says my internet connection is unstable. So hopefully it'll work its way through.
Yeah, you're still
2014,
freezing.
3.2 billion for Nest. Oh, shoot. Am I freezing?
Just a little, but keep going.
All right. Sorry, guys. 2.6 billion in 2019 for Looker, and in Fitbit, 2.1 billion, also in 2019. Here's my question to you guys, if you can hear me and I'm not freezing. Google bought Motorola Mobile back in 2011 for 12.5 billion. And in 2014, Google sold it to Lenovo. Why would they do something like that? Google doesn't make mistakes. Why would they buy something in 2011 and 3 years later turn around, sell something that company value that they purchased? What's their thought behind this? Anybody?
Buy it, make it more efficient, make it worth more, and then resell.
Thought? Okay. All right. Anybody else?
They just couldn't compete with Apple, so they just took their losses and tried to get back some money before they lost everything.
Okay. Well, now doesn't Google have
Yeah, you froze, Professor.
don't they have a phone out? Yes. Are you guys
Lots of
frozen?
work, you-
Oh, geez, this is terrible. Angela, I am so sorry. Yeah. This is getting bad, isn't it? Where it's freezing all the time, huh? All right. So instead of torturing you guys all night long, which it seems now, because
Yeah, you're gone again. And I would really hope that you'd go over all the matrices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask him the
Fair?
one question.
Did you hear me on that? Can you give me a thumb? Yeah, the matrices? All right, okay, let's do that. Let me go down to the matrices and see if we can do that. All right, good. Let's go down to that. And then I'll still record the sessions, okay? But let's go through the matrices and have you guys see if we can make it through there, okay? Is that fair?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you one thing before we get too far in. You know, you have our strategy plan assignments, and it only has Word docs in there. You have all these tables that we're supposed to use, and they're not usable. I've actually had
okay.
to recreate all those tables in Excel.
Yeah, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to upload for you guys tonight, something called a strategy suite. And
Okay.
it is a file that has all of those matrices that you can fill in. All you'd have to do is fill it in. And then what you do is you highlight the area once it's completed and you cut it and then paste it into your paper as a. Is that good? All right. Angela's happy. Here we go. All right. So let's talk about the BCG matrix. This is a positioning matrix. So in the positioning matrix, it's two variables and it's a 2x2 matrix. The two variables are relative market share and industry growth rate. So what we're trying to do here is determine then what share of the market we have relative to the industry leader and what kind of growth rate is that industry growing at, and then what's our growth rate. And so we're looking at hard numbers is what we're actually looking at when we use the BCG matrix. So let me give you an example of how this works. I'm not breaking up right now. Am I still good? Good. No. Yes. Good. All right. Okay. So relative market share is this. Let's say, Angela, you are the industry leader. Your sales are 100 million a year. And Christopher, you are also leading in the same industry that Angela's in, but your sales are 50 million a year. So your relative market share to the industry leader would be 50%. You guys understand that? Right. Okay. So then you would plot yourself on this graph as having a relative market share of 50%. Angela would plot herself on this graph as having 100%. All right. So that's the variables. That's relative market share. The second variable is market growth rate. Now, this is found basically by Googling. So let's say that you have the auto industry and let's vehicle. So you're doing your paper Tesla. So one of the things that you want is the industry growth rate for electric vehicles. And it's going to tell you what the growth rate is. It'll give you a growth rate number goes on the center of the matrix. And I'll show you that here in a second. The other number you need is your growth rate. So Angela, let's say that you want to look at Tesla, that's your company. What is your annual growth rate? You can kind of Google that and it comes back at a certain growth rate number. Now you plot that number relative to the industry number. Here's how it goes. All right, so here's our matrix and you can see it's a very simple matrix. It's a 2x2 matrix. Going horizontally on the top is our relative market share. Vertically on the side there is our market growth rate. In this particular example, the market growth rate average is 10%. Now, when you're doing your company, you're going to be looking at the average growth rate of that industry, and that average growth rate goes here. So it may not be 10%. It could be less, it could be more. And then your growth rate of your company is going to be plotted relative to that industry growth rate. Do I have any questions thus far? Does that make sense? Elizabeth, you good? All right, super. Now, again, like I was talking with Angela and Chris, relative market share is your market share relative to the industry leader. So if we're looking then at electric vehicles, we're going to be only looking at those that are electric vehicles. So let's say that you're competing Tesla against the electric vehicles found in Chevy or Ford. You don't want to put the full Ford retail numbers up there because that's not going to be a true reflection of just the electric vehicles. You want to just use the sales of the electric vehicles that GM has or Ford has, and then your sales on that. And that's going to give you your relative market share. Does that make sense, guys? All right. And then you plot it, and then you would plot that relative position on there. And from that, Now we have some recommended strategies for your firm. So you can see we got 4 quadrants here. If your firm is plotted in the quadrant to the top left, the strategies that are recommended for your firm to pursue would be backward or forward horizontal, or excuse me, backward or forward integration, market penetration, market development, or product development. On the top right, it would be market penetration, market development, product development. And wait a minute, we got divestiture there. So you got 3 growth strategies and 1 that is a divestment strategy. So any thoughts on why you would have 3 growth and 1 divestment strategy in that quadrant? Why would they have that as an option?
Is that to pare down your products to
Good
the
thought.
successful ones?
Yep, good thought. Now we're looking now at one of the areas that we're looking at here, Angela, would be that relative market share. So if we're in that quadrant, our relative market share is going to be low. So one of the reasons that our relative market share could be low is that our product just doesn't fit into the market. We're just not doing well with that product. And because of that, we could think about divesting that product as far as a product line, one of our numbers of product lines that we have.
Would a good example of that be with Tesla? They did away with the Roadster and went with the sedan, the Model 3. Is that similar to that situation?
Yeah, it didn't have a large enough market share. There wasn't people buying it. And because of that, they stopped making it.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yep, good one, good one. Now, also, you got 3 growth strategies here. So even though you have a relative market share, it's telling you that you can do market penetration, market development, and product development. So these are growth strategies. So now let's think of the example of Ferrari. Ferrari's never going to have a large market share, are they? They follow a differentiation strategy. So they're still profitable and they're still competitive. So now we're looking at 3 different types of growth strategies for a company like Ferrari. You can do market penetration, you can do product development, and you can do market development. So there's the examples or the reasoning behind 3 growth strategies and a divestiture strategy. So let's go to the bottom left. These are your cash cows. Now we can do a product development, we can do diversification, we can do retrenchment, and we can do divestiture. So now with this one here, these are products that a firm can continue to rely on a cash flow. These are the cash cow type of things. These are the ones that don't require a lot of promotion and marketing. They generate sales. The the customers going into the store picks these up automatically because this is the product that they've always been using and they're going to continue to use it. It's kind of like picking up your Bounty tissue paper or your Charmin toilet paper. Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if it was relevant for like Tesla. Would that be their solar panels and their energy units where they store electricity? Would that count as one of these?
It is one of their business units, and we would have to look at their relative market share and their market growth rate on there in order to plot them in one of these 4 quadrants.
Well, I was talking about quadrant, the one we were just talking where it's a
The
cash-
lower left.
Yeah, the
The
lower
lower-
left. Would those be a
lower
cash
left.
cow?
So is
Because-
that a cash cow for them? Is it where?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, right. So what they could do then with that particular product is they could do product development, or they can diversify that product. So they can make different adaptations of that particular product to get more exposure in other marketplaces as 2 different types of strategies. Now you notice that the last 2 here are retrenchment and divestiture.
Is
So
the
that's-
retrenchment the reduction of cost? Is that
Yep.
really? Yeah,
Well, it's a
okay.
reduction of units too. So when you retrench, what you're trying to do is consolidate your units consolidate your corporation and only focus on those that have profit potential.
So is this is only in relation to products?
Well, generally, yes.
Okay.
Generally, yes. So when BCG developed this, it was looking then at products, because what we're looking at, you can see the strategies here. We're looking at a market penetration, a product development. So we're looking at generalized products. There have been applications of this with different service related industries. Not all that doesn't fit that well when you're looking at service. So back to this lower left quadrant, we got the retrenchment and divestiture. So why would we have those two strategies in that particular box? You got two of them are growth. You got product development and diversification strategies. And then you got two that are not.
Because the market growth is low.
There you
There's-
go. That's it, Angela. Market growth is low. So if you think of market growth as low and you think of the industry life cycle, you would be found then on the top part of that industry life cycle, that mature part of the life cycle. And your next move then, if you can't extend that, is going to be going into a decline stage. So then you're looking at retrenching or divesting. Now, the one that's in the bottom right, that's really clear. You don't have market share and you don't have growth rate. So in that particular case, the strategies that are recommended for that firm or those products would be retrench, divest, or liquidate. All right. So there's our first positioning matrix. Does anybody have any questions having to do with that? How's my choppiness? Has it somewhat moderated? I'm good. All right. So let's then go to some advantages and disadvantages of the BCG. Well, the advantages of this, it's quantifiable. You're using hard numbers here. So all these numbers are quantifiable numbers. And by placing them in those 4 different squares, you have easy identifiers to remember those 4 different categories. In doing that, in placing those different products or business units in those different categories, it helps those decision makers of the firm look at how we're going to allocate resources for these different product lines or these different business units. Now, the disadvantages of this, if you're in a highly turbulent industry, wherein you're in technology or where you're in biomed or some of those highly disruptive industries, it's not going to work very effectively. This works in industries that have a moderate level of turbulence or a low level of turbulence. Now, when we look at growth rate, we know that growth rate is only one aspect of industry attractiveness. Your industry can be attractive and have a low growth rate. Market share is only one aspect of overall competitive position. As the example I gave you with Ferrari. Ferrari doesn't have a large market share, but that doesn't mean that they're not competitive. And then when we look at high and low, it's pretty simplistic as far as positioning a product or a firm. And then the relationship between market share and profitability is debatable. Having large market share doesn't always mean that you're going to have high profitability. You can have a high market share and have moderate profitability or low profitability. So that relationship isn't always something that is a standard. It's not a go-to. Having high market share doesn't mean you're going to have high profitability. All right. So here's how you create that BCG matrix. You determine your company's relative market share, and then you plot that on the x-axis. That's the horizontal axis. And then you determine your market share growth rate, your market's growth rate, and you plot that on the vertical axis, the y-axis, and that goes in the center line. And then you determine your company's growth rate, And that's plotted in relationship to that y-axis. And then you connect the y-axis and the x-axis and you determine where your firm's position is on the BCG matrix. Let's go over to the GE McKinsey matrix. Here's another positioning matrix. Now, this one was developed by McKinsey for the GE Corporation. And GE wanted to know their business units, how they look on one matrix in relationship to each other. How well are they performing in relationship to another on a single matrix? Now, what we look at here, the two variables that we're going to be using are going to be industry attractiveness. We're going to be looking at how attractive is the industry in which that business unit is competing. So one thing we're looking at is rating the industry alone. And then we rate the business unit. How strong is that business unit? Now, another thing that this one does that's different than the BCG is we look at the size of the market, and that's going to be indicated by a size of a circle. The larger the market share, the larger the circle. Our share of that market is going to be indicated in that circle as a pie slice with a percentage number. And one more thing that this one indicates is direction. So you're going to have an arrow on here, and it's going to determine whether or not that industry is getting more attractive or less attractive, or the business unit is getting stronger or weaker. So let's take a look and see how this one's done. Here's how we do it. So we're going to select some factors that determine our industry attractiveness, and we're going to give them a rated value. So we're going to give each one of them some sort of weight to determine their attractiveness. And that could be industry profitability, it could be global opportunities, it could be profit, it could be size of the market, those types of things to determine industry attractiveness. In fact, I'll show you a list of those. And then when we're looking at business unit relative performance, their strength, now we're going to be measuring the business unit. Is it profitable? What is the what's the stock price? The things that can determine that firm's profitability. Does it have good customer relations? Those things. So we're going to then look at those factors, and we're going to give them a weighted value relative to each other. And then all of the weighted values is going to be a 1.0. It's similar to what we've done before. And then we rate how well the industry is doing and how well the business unit's doing on a rating of 1 to 4. 1 would be poor, 2.5 is average, and 4 is going to be excellent. Now, anywhere in between there, we can also put numbers. So let's say that it's above average, but not quite excellent. We can put a 3 in there, a 3.5, 3.25. So let me show you what it looks like. All right, let's see, where are we here? Here are some factors that could be used for a business unit strength, looking at the market share or market niche. Now, the reason I have both there is this. If we're looking at market share, that would work for a company like Toyota. They have a large market share. And so when you're looking at business unit strength, Toyota having a large market share, they would be excellent. But if we're looking at market share and you used Ferrari, that wouldn't work because Ferrari has a low market share. But do they have a market niche? And they do. So using market niche for Ferrari would be a better selection to determine that business unit strength than market share. Another factor that you could consider would be access to distribution channels. What kind of growth is occurring in that market? What kind of production capacity with that business unit? Is there brand equity with that business unit? What about profit margin of that business relative to the competition? Supply chain management, and then what kind of cash or cash equivalent does that business unit have? Those could be factors that are used to determine what kind of strength that business unit has. Now what we're doing is looking at the industry in which that business unit is competing. What's the market growth rate? What's the market size? Is there a lot of demand variability that occurs within that industry? Now, one of the things about demand variability is this. we don't want a lot of variability in demand. We like consistency. We like to be able to project and forecast within an industry. And anytime the demand continues to go up and down and up and down, that makes it less attractive for those competitors. They would rather know that the demand is constant or fairly constant. That way they're able to determine profitability. They're able to determine sales. They're able to determine inventory. They're able to determine costs having to do with raw materials based on that stability. Whether or not the industry overall is profitable, what levels of rivalry exist within that industry. And then with that industry, are there opportunities for global growth? We also then look at factors that can have an effect on that industry. Those political, social factors, environmental factors, economic factors, and technological. Can they have an effect on this industry that will make this industry less attractive? So here's how we do this. We're going to then take this information and we're going to plot that firm based on those two sets of variables, industry attractiveness and business unit strength. And it's going to go in a 3x3 matrix. And in that 3x3 matrix, it's going to be divided into different zones. If you're in a particular zone, it's going to tell you to invest. In other words, follow an aggressive strategy. In the center area of that, it's going to tell you to manage. So you'd be looking at kind of just having a stability strategy until you can determine whether or not you should follow a growth strategy or divestment strategy. And then if you're in the bottom right quadrant of this matrix, it's going to tell you to harvest or divest that business unit. So here is then some data that goes to determine your positioning. So here's the raw data based on the industry attractiveness and business unit strength. And you can see that there's weighting that has been put on each one of these factors and the rating as well. And then we have a weighted score. So here are some factors determining industry attractiveness. Market growth rate, makes sense. Global opportunities, industry rivalry. Is the industry profitable? And then market size. So you can see I only used 5 here. You don't have to use a great deal of them. You just want to generally get an idea whether or not that industry is going to be attractive. Total weight is going to be a 1.0. And the rating on this, you can see that the company is doing really, really well. It's 3s and 4s on the rating on a scale of 1 to 4. So the total weight on this particular element here on the industry attractiveness is a 3.85. Under the business unit strength, we're looking then at market share or market niche, looking at production capacity, growth in that market share, profit, and brand image. Again, those are all indicators of business unit strength. And you can see that they all have different weights based on their relative value to each other. The weight total then is a 1.0. And once again, we have a rating here of all 3s and 4s. So the total weighted score on this one came out as a 3.7. So we got a 3.85 and a 3.7, and we plot it then on our matrix. And it's in the top left-hand corner that we have that. So 3.85, 3.7. It's telling us then, based on the industry attractiveness and based on our business unit strength, that we should follow an aggressive strategy, an invest strategy. Now, there's also a little bit of information on here as well. You notice we have a pie shape with the number 35 in there. That's telling us then that of this market share, we have 35% of it. And you can see that that circle is smaller than the circle down at the bottom right. Now, I put the bottom right circle in there just as an example for comparison. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. You can also see in the top left that we have an arrow. That arrow is indicating movement of the industry and also movement of the business unit strength. And you can see that the arrow is going upward. So that means that the business unit strength is becoming stronger. And it's also moving to the left, which means the industry is becoming stronger. So our position in this industry is becoming stronger in a stronger industry or a more attractive industry, a very good position. Now, the one on the right, you notice that the market size is larger. And the pie shape there and the percentage is 15%. It says that this particular business unit has 15% of a larger market. But the arrow is telling us something here. The arrow is going to the right where the industry is becoming more attractive. But the business unit, excuse me, the arrow is going to the right where the industry is becoming less attractive, pardon me. But the business unit level is going up. That means the business unit is becoming more attractive. So how could we do that? How could the business unit become more attractive and the industry become less attractive? How can our business unit become stronger and our industry become less attractive? Any thoughts on that one? This has a lot to do with the industry life cycle.
Technology, the lifespan of.
Okay, Chris, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, what is it? The shelf life of the product? And then how much the competitors are matching that, or people getting into the market as far as the companies, other companies, competitors?
Are they getting into the market or are they exiting the market? So let's think of the industry life cycle. So we know the industry life cycle, you have the emergent, you have the G1, you have the G2, you have maturity, and then you have decline. And we know the characteristics of the life cycle. If you're in the mature stage and you're starting to slip to decline, those firms that are in the industry are starting to either consolidate or they're going to exit, right? Isn't that the characteristics of those two stages?
Correct.
Right. So that then means that the industry is becoming less attractive because the industry is mature or declining. But because of the fact that there are fewer competitors in that industry now, our business unit is becoming stronger. We're becoming more competitive. There are fewer competitors in there. So that would be an explanation why that arrow would be indicated as it is. So the industry is declining, but because it's declining, we have people exiting the industry. And because they're exiting the industry, our business unit is becoming stronger. Whatever customers are remaining in that industry have fewer opportunities to select from who they're going to buy that, whatever that product or service is. So we become stronger by doing that. Did that make sense to anyone? Ange, you good? Yep. Chris? All right, good. All right. So there are advantages and some limitations to that GE McKinsey. Advantages, it looks at more variables. In fact, you pick the variables that you want to determine industry attractiveness and business unit strength. You pick those. And then you can determine then based on those variables, how they are weighted as far as importance relative to each other, and then how well that industry is doing or how well that business unit is doing based on 1 to 4. So it recognizes also that attractiveness can be assessed different ways. So again, going back to selecting the criteria that you want for attractiveness is up to you. It's not just a set of variables that are pre-chosen that you use. These are the ones that you feel are the ones that most or best represent determining that industry attractiveness or that business unit strength. Disadvantages. Well, there's a little bit more burdensome, a little bit more cumbersome. And if you haven't done this very often, it can be a challenge to do this, to go through this. The estimates on here, the weighting on those different variables and the assessment, the rating on those different variables is somewhat subjective. But as you become more familiar with how to do a GE McKinsey matrix, that variability or subjectivity of those factors diminishes and you become much more accurate on that. You know which factors to choose. You know, then based on those factors, how well the firm or the industry is doing going from a 1 to 4. So that subjectivity diminishes. New products and business units that are new, aren't going to be reflected well on this GE McKinsey. We don't really have a good historical data on that. And it doesn't really represent the interaction between business units and the core competencies of each business unit. So you might have a business unit that looks like it's not performing well. And based on that position, think about maybe divesting that business unit. But that business unit might be used to support other business units that the firm might have. Remember, we're looking at corporate level strategy. So we're looking at multiple business units here. So one business unit might support other business units. So that has to be taken into consideration. All right. We're going to jump onto a new one called the SPACE matrix. Strategic Position Action Evaluation Matrix. This one is based on 4 sets of variables. Again, this one's a little bit more complicated here. We're looking at competitive advantage and financial strength. That's internal assessments of the firm. And then externally, we look at assessing the industry stability and the environment in which the industry competes. That's stability. So we're going to be looking at how competitive the firm is and how strong that firm is financially. 2 assessments there of the firm. And then externally, we're looking at the industry again, and we're looking at the environment in which the industry competes. So this one here is going to be a little strange. All the way up until now, we've been using a 1 through 4 determination on our matrices. Remember that EFE, IFE, everything's 1 through 4, CPM 1 through 4, right? Everything's 1 through 4. This one's 1 through 6. And we're using positive numbers and negative numbers on this one. Oh, joy. Now we're going to have so much fun. Here's the way we do this. Well, you can see here, we have a 4-grid matrix. And in each one of those grids, there's recommended strategies again on what that firm should pursue if they're found in those grids. The 4 quadrants are aggressive, conservative, defensive, and competitive. Now, when we're looking at factors to determine our competitiveness on here, we should be looking at things from the EFE and IFE and the competitive profile matrix. The GE McKinsey matrix should also be considered. So this particular SPACE matrix can be tailored to that firm's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's take a look at how we do this. So we're going to select a set of variables that we'll use to gauge our competitive advantage. Now, our competitive advantage could be used, we could be using the variables that looked at our business unit strength from the GE McKinsey. Remember, we were looking at business unit strength as one of those areas of measurement. So we could take some of those factors and use them here in determining our competitive advantage. Environmental stability. Well, remember when we did the GE McKinsey, we were looking at the industry attractiveness. So we'd be looking at environmental stability and maybe industry stability here, using some of the factors that we found with the GE McKinsey when we did our industry attractiveness. And in financial strength, that just comes off the firm's financial performance, looking at their annual report, balance sheet, financial statement. So here's how we do this. We're going to be looking at competitive advantage. So we're going to use 1 internal and 1 external, competitive advantage, internal, and environmental stability, external. And we're going to use negative ratings for those, -6 worst to -1 best. We then look at industry stability and financial strength. We're going to use positive numbers on that. +1 is worst, +6 is best. Now, with each set of factors or variables, what we're going to do is average them. We're going to add them all up and divide it and average them and come up with an average number. And then we take the difference between the 2 that we're measuring, and that's going to give us our x-axis number and our y-axis number. I know that sounded a little bit confusing. Let me show you what it looks like here. All right. So here we have the grids that are showing you the numbers, the sheet that shows you the numbers. So we've got under internal, all those factors are in blue. External, all those are in rows. So internally, we're looking at competitive advantage, and internally, we're looking at financial strength. So we're using one internal to determine our y-axis and one internal to determine our x-axis. Now with our x-axis, we're going to take our competitive advantage and we're going to compare that to industry stability. So let's take a look at some of the factors that we put down. Again, if we considered the BCG and the GE McKinsey matrix, you know that we use market share and product quality and customer loyalty. Well, that wasn't in there, but we can use that. Product life cycle, capacity utilization, technological know-how, and then whether or not we have any control of our suppliers and our distributors. Remember, now we're going from a -6 is our worst to a -1 is our best. And in this particular case, our competitive advantage, pretty darn good. We got -1s and -2s. So we add them all up. We divide that then by the number of factors. In this case, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We divide all of that total by 7, and we come up with an average of -1.429. On the other side here, to determine our x-axis, we're using industry stability. How stable is that industry in which we're competing? Using factors like growth potential, profit potential, financial stability, whether or not that industry is leveraged, looking at resource utilization, how easy is it to get into the market, and production capacity utilization. And again, +1 is worse, +6 is best. In this particular case, we got some moderate numbers in there, some 3s, but then we have 4s and 5s. We add them all up, divide them, and we have an average of 4.0. Now we take then the average of the competitive advantage and the average of the environmental stability. We take the difference between the two, and our number then for the x-axis is going to be a +2.57. We do the same thing to determine our y-axis. Now we're looking at the financial strength of that firm using factors like return on investment, leverage, liquidity, working capital, cash flow, inventory turn, earnings per share, and PE. And now we're looking at +1 worst to +6 best. And you can see here we did pretty good. We got 3s, 4s, and 5s. We add them all up. The average is a 3.75. Comparing that now to the environment. So this is the environment in which the industry is competing. Looking at level of technological change, rate of inflation, demand variability, price rate of competing products, barriers to entry, competitive pressure, ease of exit, price elasticity, and then overall risk in business. Going from a -6 to a -1. In this particular case, it's not bad. We average it up and average, and it's a -2. And we take the difference again, and we get a +1.75. So we got 2 plus numbers here. And now all we do is plot it. We plot then on the y-axis, the 1.75, and on the x-axis, a 2.57. And it's telling us then, based on our competitive advantage, our financial strength, how stable the industry and how stable the environment is within the industry, or in which that industry is competing, we should follow an aggressive strategy for that firm. All right, and you remember, the aggressive strategies would be backward, forward, horizontal integration, market penetration, market development, product development, and we can do related or unrelated diversification. So we've got all sorts of growth strategies that that firm can follow based on this output of the space matrix. All right. Well, let's then go on to something called the Grand Strategies Matrix. Sounds like it's really an intricate type of matrix. It's not. It's nothing more than a menu. That's all this one is. So based on your earlier findings from the SWOT, the SPACE, the BCG, the GE McKinsey, the IE matrix, based on all of those other ones, if they told you to follow an aggressive strategy, you go to the SPACE matrix and you look at the quadrant that says aggressive strategies, and you select a strategy based on what you see in that quadrant. That's really what a grand strategies matrix is. So it's organized into 4 different quadrants. And if you think about this, if you think about going back to the BCG, remember we had 4 different quadrants there. You had a star, you had a cash cow, you had a question mark, and you had a dog. 4 different identifiers in each one of those categories. So if we look at that and remember that, if we look at quadrant 1, these are firms that have a strong competitive position and a strong market growth. And if we reflect back on that BCG, if you're in a strong competitive position and you have strong market growth, you would be a star. So if your BCG told you you're a star, most likely your quadrant going to be found in quadrant 1 for your strategies. Quadrant 2, you have a weak competitive position, but you're in a fast growing market. Now, that doesn't always mean that you're not going to be profitable. Remember, I gave the example of Ferrari. So this would be that question mark, top right in the BCG. Going to our 3rd quadrant here, slow growth in a weak competitive position. Well, that's a dog. That's the bottom right of the BCG. And then last one here is strong competitive position, but the industry is growing slowly. That's the cash cow. All right, so now we have 4 different quadrants, and there they are. So quadrant 1, it looks like we have 7 different strategies that the firm can choose from to pursue. So based on our earlier assessments, we go to this one here and it says to you, all right, your firm is in such a position that it can follow any one of these 7 strategies for growth. If you're in quadrant 2, there's 6 different strategies. Quadrant 3, there are 5 different strategies. In quadrant 4, there's 3 different strategies. Here's the problem. If you have 7 different strategies that you can select from, which strategy is going to be the one that your firm best performs on? So one of these strategies, your firm might have more performance or optimal performance, where another strategy, they just have acceptable performance. They're all growth strategies. You want to find the one that gives your firm optimal performance. So the question then is, how do I rate these strategies relative to each other to see which one is best for our firm to pursue? That's where we come to the next one. It's called the QSPM, Quantitative Strategic Planning Matrix. All right. So this one here is a stage 3, high-level analytical methodological approach that analyzes any number of strategic options for that firm. You could then take all 7 of those strategies found in quadrant 1, and you can analyze them relative to each other to see which one of those strategies your firm is best able to capitalize on. So here's how we do this, kind of giving you some information. Stage 1, that's the key identifying strategic factors. That's the EFE and the IFE. Stage 2, now we're starting to formulate the different types of strategies, giving us an idea of what kind of strategies the firm can pursue. Information coming from the SWOT. The SPACE matrix clearly gives us an idea of what kind of strategy. BCG gives us an idea of what kind of strategy. GE McKinsey as well, and so does the IE matrix. That information gives us the data we need to go then to the QSPM. And of course, the QSPM is that stage 3, comparing any number of strategic choices. This way you can assess the most viable strategic choice for your firm. All right, so what we're looking at is the relative attractiveness of the different strategies based on the firm's ability to capitalize on their strengths, mitigate their weaknesses, pursue those opportunities and defend off those threats. So we're looking at the relative attractiveness of those strategies as it comes to those 4 areas. And of course, that 4 areas that we talked about, that's your SWOT. So here's how we do this. So I'm going to give you an example of how we even get to this. So this example then is going to be based on the outcome of the EFE and IFE. Pardon me here. Oh, shoot, Mitch. Excuse me one second. Mitch, can I call you after class? Okay, bye. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. So from that analysis, from the EFE and the IFE, the BCGE, GE McKinsey, SPACE, and IE, it told us that we should follow an aggressive strategy. And the 2 strategies that we're going to use for comparison in this particular example is going to be market penetration and product development. So here's where it came from. This was our BCG. Top left-hand side, the strategies that it was recommending that we're pursuing is backward, forward, horizontal integration, market penetration, market development, product development. That was the outcome from the BCG. GE McKinsey told us to follow a grow or an invest strategy. That was in that top left-hand quadrant. Space Matrix, we're in the top right-hand quadrant, also telling us to follow an aggressive strategy. And then the IE matrix was telling us to follow an aggressive strategy. We're right in that zone 2 area there. So that's a grow and build or an aggressive strategy. So all of those previous matrices was pointing to the firm following an aggressive strategy. So then based on that, we go then to our grand strategies matrix. And from the grand strategies matrix, we're going to pick 2 strategies just in this particular example. We're going to pick product development, or the firm can follow market penetration. And it came from here. Product development and market penetration, 2 of the 7 available for us. All right. So the quantitative strategic planning matrix, here's how it goes. We're going to take then from our SWOT matrix, or excuse me, we're going to take this from our EFE and our IFE. We're going to take those factors that came from the IFE, which would be your internal factors, your strengths and your weaknesses, and the EFE, your opportunities and threats, and we're going to bring them over, all of them over. Now, if you want to change out a strength and put in a strength that you found in your CPM, your competitive profile matrix, you can do that, but the weighting has to be the same as what came out of the IFE. So bring over your IFE, bring over your EFE. The weights, all going to be the same. All right. So now what we're going to be looking at is determining whether or not one strategy relative to the other strategy is going to be attractive based on those EFE and IFE factors. And by attractiveness, we mean this. The extent that one strategy over the other one will enable that firm to either capitalize on a strength. So we've identified strengths. Will one of these strategies over the other one help you identify or help you capitalize on that strength? Will it help you improve on the weakness? Will it help you exploit the opportunity? And will it help you avoid the threat? One strategy based on the other one. And we're looking at an attractiveness score based on a 1 through 4 again. So 1 is going to be not attractive. That means that particular strategy based on that factor, not attractive. 2 is somewhat attractive. 3 is reasonably attractive. 4 is highly attractive. We then take the weight times the rating. We get an attractiveness score, and we total all the scores all the way down. And then one strategy based on the other one, we're going to be able to determine which one is most attractive. So here's an example of what it looks like. There we go. Can you guys see this? So it's kind of a busy little one here. So you can see we've got our opportunities and threats. It came from our external factors evaluation. This is the EFE. The weights are the same. So your weighting is going to be 1.0. Now what we're looking at is the two strategies that we've chosen, product development and market penetration. Which of those two strategies are going to best help that firm pursue that opportunity and mitigate that threat? So we're looking at then in the first one here, we've got product development. It seems like this particular strategy, as far as pursuing that opportunity, is somewhat attractive. Market penetration, when it comes to that opportunity, is not attractive. When it comes to the second opportunity, it looks like both strategies are equally attractive, which would be reasonably attractive. When it comes to the third factor here, it looks like market penetration is highly attractive and product development is reasonably attractive. So giving you some other examples here, we can move down then to the strengths and weaknesses. And we can see that product development, when it comes to this strength of a drive to continually improve performance and features on all Apple products, is highly attractive. But it's not attractive for the strategy of market penetration. So there's a clear difference between one strategy and another strategy when it comes to that firm being able to capitalize on that strength or improve on a weakness, exploit that opportunity, or avoid that threat. We then total our attractiveness scores, and you can see in this particular case that product development has an attractiveness score of 4.57. Market penetration has an attractive score of 3.85. So the outcome is that the firm should pursue, based on these identified factors, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, they should pursue a product development strategy over a market penetration strategy. So when you do your report together and you're looking for it at the end of the report, it's telling you to provide me with a recommended strategy. There's where it is. You get that directly from the QSPM. It's telling you the recommended strategy. It's also giving you the alternative strategy, which would be strategic option number 2. So it's telling you then your recommended strategy and your strategic option. All right. So I'm glad we didn't break up during these matrices. Does anybody have any question having to do with the matrices? So here's what we've covered, guys. We've gone through the EFE and the IFE. We did the CPM. We did the SWOT, the SPACE, the BCG. We didn't do a DPP. That's not actually covered. We did the GE McKinsey, the IE matrix, the grand strategies, and the QSPM. Now, there are other matrices that we did that aren't in here. Remember, we did the confrontation matrix, we did the impact probability matrix, and we did the positioning matrix. So those are in there. Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, I know you asked about the matrices, but I did have a question that I didn't want to forget about.
Sure.
And I know this is a little off the matrices, but for the CAPSIM,
Yep.
we had some a question as far as the final test. Now, I specifically asked last week about doing a simulation, going like a 4-round simulation, a short thing like that.
Right.
And you said that we didn't have to do that part. Is that still correct? We just have to do that. I think it's like 8-question quiz.
Yeah, because it is the comp basic. All I'm looking for is that the quiz part of it.
The mini quiz?
Yeah, the mini quiz. So if you guys can
Okay.
do that instead of going through all of the rounds on that, just do the mini quiz.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify, and I'm sorry because I know it was in the middle of something
No, no,
else. I
that's-
I
I'm
forgot
glad-
to ask earlier.
Well, I'm glad you did that because I know that once you get to that site, and by the way, it is open, so you guys can go to that site. It looks like there's an option there to go all 4 rounds. But yeah, just take the mini quiz.
And we can just email that to you like as a group.
Oh, actually, you don't even have to do that because it'll pop up. I can see the results on CapSim.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So each person has to go in and fill in the answers.
Well, yeah, so let's say that you guys are all sitting down doing it together. So you have the 8 different questions and you discuss, Robert, with Angela. What do you get for discussion, or what do you get for quiz number or question number 1? You guys put the answer down and, you know, your results will show up on CapSim. I can just record the grade then from that. Does that sound fair?
Yeah,
Yep.
that sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. Elizabeth, you had a question? Oh, you got to go. Okay.
Bye. See you
All right. Yep. See you later. Have
Oh.
fun at the airport.
On CapSim, only one person has to record. Or the quiz is all separate. They're unique to the individual user. Because our decisions record for the whole team.
Yeah, I think on Comp Basic XM, you need to go in, remember how you did the individual quiz at the
Oh,
beginning?
yeah, you're right. We did those all individually,
Yeah, so you're gonna have
Yeah.
the same situation as that.
but we can still work it together,
Oh, heck
right?
yeah. Heck, yeah. Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you, if you can please put in the templates for all these
Yep.
matrices.
I'll do it right as soon as I get off the screen. I'll upload that and you guys can access that.
Yeah.
They're gonna be very, very helpful.
Yeah, no, I think the hardest part was trying to figure out which matrix template I was going to use and create. So if we have this, it will make everything a lot easier.
Well,
In fact,
I created the first 2, the SWOT and the CPM, Christopher. I just couldn't, I don't know what the notes are in the CPM matrix because it's a PDF. There's little notes at the top of the columns.
So if you guys want to hang on, I tell you what, I'm gonna exit the screen here. I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna go and load that onto
Post 'em.
Blackboard for you guys right now, and I'll be back to confirm that it's done. Okay, can you hang on?
Yep, go ahead.
All right.
Jack, you left something on.
I did?
No, I'm talking to my son. Sorry, I'll mute. He left something on in his room, and so have this noise in my ear.
Oh, my, okay. All right, so let's get back to you guys here. Let's see where you are. All right. So,